My name is David Kohler, and I'm from Tulsa, at least for the last 25 or so years. And I heard about the H2 Oasis through Facebook. I had a couple of friends of mine who knew some of the people that were starting it up, and they sent me an invitation. I said, well, I want to check this out. And so I talked to my wife, and she's like, oh my gosh, that whole floating thing sounds really cool. And we saw something very similar to the whole sensory deprivation thing on a very recent TV show. So the first time we wanted to float, my wife and I decided to float together. And it's a really cool experience. And my wife has had, sorry.
It's okay.
We can cut that out. Now, my wife has had some of those out-of-body experience dreams, and she's told me that, she wanted to have that kind of experience again. And when you float, it's really cool because you really can go into different levels of consciousness. There's one level of consciousness where you're aware of everything and your mind is racing. And then there's the next level of consciousness where you feel a lot of peace. You're aware of what's around you, but you're aware of just the water and the fact that you are just floating at peace. Have I floated in other pools? I've floated in all four of the pools here, and each of them have their own advantages and disadvantages. My favorite pool when I'm floating with my wife is to float in either pool 2 or 3 because it's an enclosed space and there's enough room for you can move around, you can float, and if something goes wrong, the lights come back on. But really, because it's more enclosed, you have more of a sense of unity, of togetherness when you float, as opposed to when it's just open. When you're in the float pool, when the lights first turn off, your mind starts racing a little bit, and you go through all the problems that you're reflecting on, or the situations like, I've got to do this, I want to do that, oh my gosh, I need to do this tomorrow. But then as you float a little bit longer, all that sort of falls away. You become more relaxed, and when you get out, you have more of a sense of peace because you remember all those things that are going through your head, but you realize so many of those things are just grains of sand that you're going to do, but they don't have any real meaning. And you have a real sense of peace when you walk out of the tub and you sit down and relax from the perspective that you have a deeper sense of the things that are important and the ways in your stressful life that you can relax and find that peaceful center inside of yourself. When you float, you can find that sense, and you know that it's there. And so when the stresses of your life come at you, and I'm a nurse, I work in a hospital, and there are stressful times where I sit there and say, now, just like in floating, you let the stuff that's auxiliary pass through you so that you can find that deeper peace. So would I recommend this to other people? I recommended it to my mom. My mom and dad live in Arizona now, and when my mom comes to visit, she makes it a point to make sure that she has time to float. We've recommended it to 3 or 4 other people who have really enjoyed it. In fact, my wife has a client that comes in from Texas, and every time he comes into town, he's like, Lori, you set us up with a float, right? So, no, it's really a good way to, especially if you're under a lot of stress, clear your mind and make sure that you get rid of a lot of those details that have been floating around in your brain. It's like a super concentrated sleep that you can take in an hour.